about boys. That's why.
Oh man, I could have been saying whatever I wanted. Let's redo that.
Yeah, and one more time. Just kidding. We will definitely record the next session. There are 3 sessions, remember, so you get to go to all 3 of these breakout rooms. But with that, without further ado, let me pass the mic to DeAndre.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Mark. Awesome word, Chalak. Yes, I'm so excited to be here. And I'm so excited to see everybody here taking advantage of an event like this. I'm sure you guys are no stranger to the phrase, it takes a village. And I think what you're seeing here is so many of us coming together to help usher in the next generation of young attorneys. And it's so important, I think, in my opinion, to take advantage of getting that early insight into what law school is. You know, I think all of the traditional career paths, when you think of med school, of lawyer, you know, accountant, different things like that, I think so many of us get into these career paths without really knowing exactly what it is and hearing what the day-to-day is like. And so I think any time invested in doing that is time well spent if you're considering that. And funny enough, you know, I would say I was in a situation where I didn't necessarily, you know, run into those opportunities. I was a bit of a non-traditional law student. A little bit about my story. As Mark mentioned, went to Howard University. In my last year at Howard University, right? Snaps. In my last year at Howard University, guys, I took a business law course. And in undergrad, this business law course was taught by 3 practicing attorneys. One of them was the dean of the business school. And they structured this class just like law school. Now, except for all the lawyers in here, right? You guys don't know yet. Law school classes are very different than undergrad classes, very different than any other level of education. The demands are just so high, the amount of reading, researching, analytical thinking, all of these things, right? And so this class had a 70% fail rate. 70% of the people taking this business law course at Howard School of Business were failing and then not graduating on time. So clearly I had a great amount of fear that I was now going to have to tell my mom that, hey, you know, I'm going to graduate in 4.5 years now, not 4. So I couldn't let that happen. And I had to, you know, buckle down and really focus on this class. And, you know, again, through fear, I was like, there's no way I'm not passing this class. I ended up testing out of the class. Like I didn't have to take the final because on the first 2 tests, I ended up doing so well. And so literally from there, it was just like this whirlwind, like, oh my God, you know, you tested out of this class. And I'm like, look, I'm telling you, all I did was just sit and study for it because I didn't want to fail it. But all that to say, I got, you know, advice and direction from the dean of the school and all the professors, like, man, you should really go to law school and apply your skills there. Of course, it would be my mom's dream for me to go to law school. And she was saying, go to law school, go to law school. So I was like, you know what, fine, I'm going to apply to law school, honestly, just to kind of quiet the pressure that I was getting in the noise, because I never really had any, you know, great interest in doing so. I was always entrepreneurial. And to tell you guys the truth, I really wanted to open up my own restaurants. That was my vision back in the day when I was an undergrad. So all that to say, I applied to some schools. They were all based back in LA because I was ready to move back to the West Coast. I was tired of the East Coast. So I applied to Southwestern, Loyola, I think maybe USC, just those 3 schools. To be honest, I forgot I even applied to law school. I was interviewing with Apple, which is like crazy process back in the day, ended up getting hired at Apple. And I was in the middle of orientation when I got a call from Southwestern and they're like, hey, school starts in 2 weeks. Like, we're calling to see if you're interested in coming. And, you know, for some reason, it really, now that I was actually admitted into a law school, this wasn't hypothetical anymore. It really, you know, required me to sit down and realize, okay, is this a path that I want to go down? I can be, I would say, what comes off maybe impulsive, but I'm also very calculated. And so I sat down in that short amount of time and figured out, was this a good path for me? And for me, it was going to law school means I was going to network with the judges, the attorneys, right? The leaders of our community of tomorrow. It meant I was going to be able to, you know, reconnect with my city when I was away for 4 years. And really when I left, it was just me and, you know, my high school friends. So to the networking, I wanted to start my own business. And everybody knows with the business, at some point, you're going to need a lawyer for something. And my thought process, well, I could learn different things in law school that can alleviate my needs for some of the basics when it comes to, law, contract writing, starting a business and the filings and all those things, trademarking. I just did my own trademark the other day. So all that to say, it made sense. You know what, DeAndre, go ahead. It's a small commitment in the grand scheme of things, because I was ready to start working, but I was like, you know what, another 3 years, it won't hurt. And if anything, it will propel you. So I decided to go to law school, first generation law student, wet behind the ears, didn't know what to expect. And it is crazy. It's a crazy experience. I was very fortunate to do very well in my first semester. I earned a 4.0. Again, just out of like coming in, just being a sponge. One of the biggest things that, hopefully with some great questions we get from you guys, that will be a ringing theme, is to come in and just learn this new environment. And I think I did a good job of that. I talked to my professors a lot. I observed, I looked to see what students, that were 2Ls and 3Ls, the ones that were successful, I talked to them, what did they do, things like that. But all that to say, did well. And that carried through law school. Law school is one of those things that once you figure it out, you more or less can apply that recipe to the other classes. The hardest thing about law school, in my opinion, is just understanding this new arena of education. You're challenged in a different way. You're being asked of things in a different way. And once you figure that out, again, you can apply it to most of your classes. All that to say, I went on to be student body president in my last year at Southwestern, which was probably the most rewarding experience I had. And student body president in law school is typically involved in, being the student representation of all the different orgs, and make sure there's cohesiveness, and make sure, the social life is blooming and people are connecting. And, that's typically the main role. For me, I wanted to leave my legacy also in an academic way. So I, as president, started a program called Study with the President that Southwestern Law School still to this day has. And basically, I created this program where I volunteered my time on the weekends to assist all of the 1Ls and 2Ls who wanted whatever kind of help they needed, right? Whether that was help with their classes, as Chalak mentioned, like towards contracts, right? Whether that was skills like, hey, I need to learn how to essay write or do multiple choice questions, whatever it may be. And from that idea, or from that event and that program that I created, I was like, man, this is something that I think I can actually, do and create for our community, for the world. I wanted to revolutionize. I want to revolutionize law school in the way that students can be given one more representation, right? Because a lot of us, that's one thing I learned from Apple. Why does everybody love Apple? At least back in the day when we were going into stores, like you can go into an Apple store and see somebody who looked like you, talk like you, whatever it may be. They have one of the most diverse, right, employee base out of all the companies out there. And that's what we want in law school. We want to be able to go to professors, go to leaders on campus and have representation in whatever way that may be. And so, yeah, that's what we have with Legally Fit, where basically I want to give everybody the tools they need to succeed and not feel, weird for being in class, not knowing what some of the basics are, because again, you get into this space and there's so much of the imposter syndrome and do I belong? And sometimes it's the same exact questions that the peers next to you have as well, but you just may feel nervous asking them. So I want to create a learning environment that's safe for everybody, that's fun, because this process can be fun. I think we hear so much about law school being difficult, which it is. It's challenging, but it can very much so be rewarding and fun as well. But yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that. I don't want to go too far. But that's what I do. I give back. I help create this program. Nicole is a testament of that. She was one of our students in law school, and she is taking the bar. She just took the bar. The results come out May 6th, Nicole?
May 6th. Yep, that's
May
the day.
6th.
Yep.
Everybody send some hearts and some love to Nicole. She's gonna be an attorney soon, that she gets those good results. But so yeah, I love to open it up to questions and really be here as a resource for you guys. Anything you're thinking, again, no question is a bad question. We're here to answer anything you got.
All right, does anyone have a question for our esteemed panelists? Feel free to come off mute or raise your little cartoon hand.
I'm also keeping an eye on the chat. So if you're a little bit less comfortable putting your camera on and you want to just drop in the chat, please feel free.
Totally good point. Any questions?
Believe me, I think between DeAndre and I, we can keep talking. I'm not going to answer we're lawyers. All lawyers are content to speak for as long as you let us.
Right.
All right. Well, I can kick us off with a question I think a lot of people, including myself, who is considering law school, wonder, which is we hear a lot about how like the first year of law school, it's like so intense, like say goodbye to holidays and weekend or whatever. It's like really, really overwhelming. So, just generally, what are the tips and tricks that you would share with people who are concerned about managing the workload and managing their own? You mentioned Dean Richards, like mental health, like managing themselves, keeping themselves in the right headspace for law school, and handling that workload.
Yeah, I'll answer that, Mark, and then I see another question in the chat. So, if you're, and I want to make a distinction between if you're going to a full-time program, right, where that's what you're doing all day, every day, versus if you're doing a part-time or evening program. So, for example, we don't offer for the first year an extended or part-time program, but I know Southwestern does. And I think that's an important distinction to make because there's a little bit of a different of a balance, and I'm not sure, DeAndre, which program you did at Southwestern, but I think that is an important distinction because if you're doing a full-time ABA program and doing it right, you should probably be putting in somewhere around 50 to 60 hours a week. And if you think about that, that's not completely unmanageable, that's totally doable. And I think the best way to think about managing that time and then managing your external responsibilities and the things that bring you joy, the best ways to do that is to really think about creating a schedule. So when I was a student, both my first year and in future years, this is so old school now because everyone has everything on their phones, but I had a color coded printed schedule that was up on my wall in front of my desk, and I had a copy in a little notebook because I also learned very quickly that my family, just so you know, calls me, one of their affectionate nicknames for me is Raccoon because I get distracted by sparkly things. And so since I was little, we'd start on one thing and then I'd see something and be like, ooh, that over there. I know that I get distracted, so I couldn't use my laptop to take notes every day because I would see someone else on, doing something that I'd be like, oh, I should look that up. And I would end up down a rabbit hole, and 10 minutes later, have no idea what we were talking about in class. So I think even that, see, that was a distraction, but I'm bringing it back. I think even that is important to know yourself in terms of balancing that workload. Everyone else was typing, 60, 90, 100 miles a minute, right? To get those notes down. And I had to really pause myself and go, that may work for Mark sitting to my left and DeAndre sitting to my right, but that's not going to work for me because I am going to get distracted. So I need to sit first or second row, have my notebook, have, a couple different color pens, and be really paying attention to what this professor is saying so that I'm digesting it well and my notes reflect that. So I think that's one. Surviving that first year of law school is understanding yourself, but two, that's where it goes back to creating that schedule. And I literally had every minute of my day blocked out. And so I would say, I'm waking up at this time. This is breakfast, class, break. During this break, am I going to call my grandfather? Am I going to, and I literally scheduled in, call your sister, right? Reach out to this friend. This break was friend time. This break was workout time. Okay, we're done with class. At Pepperdine, we have a dedicated lunch hour, which is when most of our student organizations do events. So I would say lunch hour, go to student org, get involved. After class, here's your 45-minute break. And then you're going to study for this amount of time, then go work out. And for me, and I think for many students, perhaps not that level of rigidity. And of course, I didn't always follow it directly to the minute, but having a conception of where your time is going is very helpful in order to know inside that you're putting in all the effort that you can while also making time to connect with your family, also making time to do the workouts, eat well, sleep, the things that are sort of basics to us that are the first things that we let go as well. We all sacrifice sleep when we think we're too busy. We all sacrifice our workout. We all sort of run and grab a burger instead of taking the time to make a good meal, right? And if you build those in, then what that also does is reduce the guilt when you do it. So I could look at my schedule and go, I don't need to feel guilty about taking 3 hours on Saturday to spend time with friends because I know I've put in the work Monday to Friday. I know I've done that work. So now I can give myself this time that is vital to my emotional and mental well being without having this lingering in the back of my mind going, you haven't worked hard enough. You haven't tried hard enough. And I think that is also an important thing um, to overcome there. And so that really becomes useful. Many law schools, mine especially, I know that well, have taken on real mental health initiatives. So to help students figure some of those things out, the state bar, the California bar, has opportunities for service that the bar does for students around things like wellness and mental health. And once you're a law student in the state of California, you're entitled to those services free. And so they provide counseling services, but they also provide wellness and nutrition services as well. I see a notification, so I'll pause there. Can I just say really quickly to, I hope I'm saying this right, Azia's question in the chat. I did not have family financially support me. I'm first generation. I'm not even American. I'm on a work visa here right now. My family is Jamaican Canadian, and they could not financially support me, which is one of my tips for choosing a law school. Look at that financial aid package and apply early. Get those scholarships, those grants, see what you can get early because that also makes a difference to your mental health. If you don't have in the back of your mind every dime that you're racking up, you know? So no, I didn't have my family support me financially. My first year of law school, I was completely dependent on my scholarships and a little bit of loan, not that much, thank God. And then my second and third year, I think between the two, I worked several jobs. I worked on campus as a resident advisor. So I lived on campus, and because of that, I got my housing free. And so that was important because that took a lot off and a meal allowance. And I worked for professors. So you'll hear when you're in law school about the opportunity to be a teaching assistant, a research assistant. So I did both of those. I worked for LexisNexis as a student rep. And I did I had a grant as well. And so that helped me to, again, try to reduce those loan amounts my second and third year. I apologize for going so long. DeAndre, do you have anything to add to either sort of how you take care of yourself and balance that year, or do we want to try to get Mr. Taylor in with his question?
Yeah, a few things to add. So first, Mark, I would say, one piece of advice that I give to every student, when they come into law school is to start off and be very, very intentional with why you are going to law school. I think the two biggest things there are academically, what are your goals? And if you have an idea, what are your career goals as well? To make sure that you're then taking a path that is aligned with that. I think that's so important just in general in life, to know where you want to go and then know what that path is, and that you do, definitely know less than what's needed for that path. And also don't burn yourself out and do a whole lot more than what's needed for that path. So with that said, I think, through my experience, I've come in working with Legally Fit or starting Legally Fit, I realized so many students have different academic goals. And I think that can dictate what your level of sacrifice is for your success. I think to Chalak's point, there is a baseline amount of commitment that you need to be ready for, right? The 50 hours a week, that sounds like baseline. Now from there, it's are your academic goals to be top of your class, right? Because you do want to work at a top 10 law firm. And we know the path to get to a top 10 law firm is to be at a top 10 school, or a top school, or to be at a smaller school and have a very high GPA. So then that's what you need, right? And then so if you're going, let's say for top 10%, well, then now your sacrifice and your commitment might need to be a little bit more, then let's say the student who, a common scenario I see is somebody's family has a family business, and now they've sent one of their own to law school to be able to learn the ropes, learn what they need to then be able to graduate, come back, and then now impart that knowledge on the business. Well, you know, killing yourself in law school to be top of the class may not be as important for that person. And again, it seems like your academic goals are more so to really hone in on one, probably the classes to pass the bar, because chances are you want to pass the bar, but then also being very mindful, well, electives you take that can then, you know, advance your business or whatnot. So I think that's number one, identify your academic goals. Number two, and this is echoing what Chalak mentioned in my own words, it's stay in your lane, right? Stay in your lane is you can't compare yourself to everybody else and what they're doing. So again, I was again a top student at my school in my first year, and I was not the student who was in the library the latest, nor was I the first one in the library. I was somewhere definitely in that middle. But it's about just finding what's right for you. It's about not having FOMO, fear of missing out. And like always, it's so easy in law school to be like, oh, well, they're over there doing that. Doesn't mean I should be doing that as well. You know, you need to figure out what you should be doing. You know, have your law school is a big trial and error. Again, unless you're finding proper guidance, it's a bigger trial and error. And, you know, it's a lot of figuring it out as you go. And stay in your lane. Don't get too caught up in the mental game of comparing yourself to everybody else and what they're doing. Doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it right, or they're just doing something that works for them, right? Maybe that person is not a morning person, right? So they wake up later and they stay up later, right? Where you're waking up, let's say at 8 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever it may be to study. And then the last thing that I'll add when it comes to like managing law school and doing all of that is, oh, and we got 26 seconds really quickly. It's like making sure that this is the right season of your life and the right chapter of your life to go to law school. I think sometimes we don't understand the demands of it, and we may have a lot going on in our lives. So make sure it's a good time to even start law school is a piece of advice I'd give.
Thank you so much to both of you. Really good notes. We're about to leave, but know you can come back to this room. We have 3 sessions today. This is just the first one.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all had great conversations in the breakout rooms. Thank you again for being here with us. As a reminder, this is going. I appreciate it. No worries. Thank you so much. We do have Spanish interpretation available for those that want to join our event and listen in Spanish. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's very quickly show how we're feeling by using an emoji reaction sign. How was your first breakout room experience? I'm seeing hearts, confettis, thumbs up, some happy face emojis, lovely. And I'm seeing some chats, very informative, loved it. Thank you all so much. We are now going to go into our second rotation of breakout rooms. So this is an opportunity for all our attendees to choose a different room if you'd like. If you absolutely love the speakers from the one you joined, you're welcome to join back to the same one. Our panelists, please again join your same breakout room, and you will have new students to have conversations with this time around. If you need any technical support, I'm always here. Just send me a chat or feel free to unmute yourself. You'll see the breakout rooms icon again at the bottom of your screen in just one moment. Enjoy, everybody. We'll see you back in 30 minutes.
We're back.
And we're back.
We're back. Maybe, Mr. Taylor, we can start with your question and then we can reintroduce ourselves for new people who come. But I just want to give you the chance if you want to go to another breakout room to get your question asked.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sorry, I'm not on camera. I was kind of on a rush this morning, and I'm actually on the Zoom call from my phone. So instead of getting an unstable picture, I'd rather just have you hear this beautiful deep voice. But thank you so much all for hosting this room. It's been such an informative morning. My name is Ngozi Taylor. I'm undergraduate, just to get a little bit about myself, undergraduate at Dillard University, New Orleans, Louisiana. I did my 1L year. It's a bit of an interesting story, at North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina, HBCU. I had to pull out I had several deaths in my family, and I missed one funeral, didn't want to miss another. So it was a hard decision to pull, but I had to withdraw. And coming back to Los Angeles, where I was born and raised, I decided to get some work experience in the meantime. So now I'm working at a law firm in downtown Los Angeles, currently a paralegal in trust and estates. And so kind of starting that reapplication process to go back to law school, eyeing a lot of Los Angeles schools, because now I know I'm going to have to do the evening night school route because bills need to be paid. So kind of extending this question out to anybody who really is able to answer, what steps would you recommend a 1L student take to really get into study groups? How would you network with other students, and even just with the actual professors to make sure that they know where you're at mentally, and if any, what areas that you may be struggling in terms of the content being provided in their classes? Because I remember during my 1L year, contracts was an issue. It was a problem. So, and despite all the study groups that I was into, for some reason, the availability of the professor wasn't always, it wasn't always there, unfortunately. So I just wanted to kind of pick your brain about what can we do to, have an alternate means of getting support in that area.
Yeah, I can definitely start off with that one. The first thing I want to comment on is that I think coming into law school, a lot of students, maybe because they do events like this or advice they may receive, et cetera, they have so much on their agenda, of what to do. It's like, all right, I'm going to come in, I'm going to network with all my professors, I'm going to network with all of my peers and my students, I'm going to get top grades, right? And try to do all these different things. And in my opinion, it can become overwhelming. And we're trying to do all of it in this first semester. And chances are you might not do any of those particular areas necessarily very well because we're so spread thin. In my opinion, and this is all approach, right? And it's always, again, aligned with what are your goals. For me, going in, my number one goal was to get the best grades possible. To Chalak's point, getting the best grades possible in that first semester open up the most opportunities for the rest of your law school career. It makes the networking afterwards much easier, right? You get a lot more invites to things, right? You get introduced to people because of your grades, things like that. And so also regarding the financial aid, when you do well, you get scholarships. I didn't go in with any scholarships. And so I got most of my school paid for through merit-based scholarships after doing well. So all that to say, here's the approach that I took. And I enjoyed it. My first semester, I came in and I really focused on just spending time learning the law. And I did spend a lot of time with my professors. I would stick around after class and I would ask questions, get to know them. I made it very, very frequent thing to go to their office hours, right? And really try to build genuine relationships. And I think that's also another important thing, that try to align yourself and build genuine relationships with your professors. Because I think it's just, it keeps it human and not just so being opportunistic. And so that was my focus, and it played out well. I very much so did not network with my peers in my first semester, even my first year for that matter. But after the first year was good and I got my first year grades where they were, then again, remember, law school is 3 years. You don't have to do everything in the first year. So 2L year and 3L year is then where I allowed my social butterflyness to come out, and I got involved more with on-campus organizations, right? This and that. And I became student body president in my third year, all after, I'm telling you, my first year you know, if it was lunchtime and everybody would go to like the cafeteria, the lunch area to eat, I was like right outside the classroom by myself, like studying. But that was just the level of focus and, you know, way that I was approaching law school. So that's my 2 cents on it. One thing that I always add to is that, like, again, it's just what season of life are you in? And then also too, what season of the world are we in right now? Going to law school in 2022 is a lot different than going to law school in 2011, around that time that me and Chalak went. And so things change, right? And at the time, for me personally, I was okay kind of insulating myself, isolating myself from, you know, my family, my friends at that time. Like, I grew up in such a family rich social environment with friends and family that it was like, that was fine for me at that time to kind of isolate myself and just focus on law school. Well, we've been isolated for the past 2 years in COVID, right? It may not be as easy to kind of like go through law school in that way. So then maybe you have to adjust that a little bit. So maybe you do find a bit of a small group, right, to work with. And so I don't want to take too much time. I think we can move quicker to get more questions. So I'll leave it there. Just the one last thing that I'll add is that
DeAndre, I don't mean to interject, but I just wanted to follow up real quick on what you said about first year just being very active and wanting. I'm remembering your intro during the first session of the breakout room. You mentioned wanting leaving behind a legacy, and that's like something I related to a lot because when I was an undergrad, and even during my 1L year in law school, I was really focused on trying to get in and leave something behind so that, you know, a legacy. So I was trying to be going to SAB, start a club, do all these different types of things. Did you do that during your first year, or was that?
And if I may interject as well, because I see DeAndre saying no, and I just want to say we actually do not allow first-year students to start organizations, to be anything more. Some of the organizations like the SBA, which is a student body, the student government in the law school, has 1L reps, right? But we don't allow first-year students to take on any more than that, precisely because of this issue, because we want to encourage you to focus on the academics, the whole new way of learning and thinking. And I didn't mean to cut you off, DeAndre. I just want to say, like, certainly at our school, and this has happened over time, and I think many other law schools have actually institutionalized this because we see the sort of disparate impact it can have. And quite frankly, more first generation and students of color don't have someone at home telling them, hey, your first semester or so, just focus on the academics. You can leave a legacy later. So we've tried to institutionalize some of that to create a more level playing field for everyone. DeAndre, go back, you know, and feed that in. But I wanted to just interject with that some of this, the system is trying to fix as well.
And so yeah, adding on that, I want to tell you this. I did a peer mentor program. I was a peer mentor. I did Dean's Fellow, which was like an academic give back. I did law review. I did negotiations competitions. I did student body president. I did internships for judges, for Universal Studios theme park, all of that after my first year, right? Everything that I did was after my first year, literally, which is like, honestly, the first year was probably the best because it was the simplest. I literally was just like, all I'm going to focus on is learning the law. And I also want to share one other thing that I think is a great mindset for everybody too, going into that first year. As you heard, I had very high aspirations for how I was going to do in law school. I was very much so like, I need to be top of my class for these various reasons. Like, this is part of my plan. And I could feel myself starting to burn out, honestly, like in the first like week or so, because I'm just like, I got to be top of my class. Where should I be? What should I do? Right. And I'm just kind of like obsessing. And then I heard somebody in something similar to this, like in a conversation, say, if you just focus on understanding the law, everything will work itself out. And so that one little piece of advice just changed everything for me, because then now I kind of went through things more gracefully, where again, I was blocking out all the distraction, the noise. I wasn't, in student life. And I just focused on like, all right, contract law, like, let's get into this. Just me and contracts. I have to understand the basics and go from there. And once I did that, everything just kind of fell into place. So I think you heard it in a lot of different ways. And I think the moral of the story is 1L year, just allow yourself to be a student, allow yourself to learn this new environment. And then once you do well, and once you get yourself on the right track, then that's when you can start to figure out how you leave your legacy in your 2L year, 3L year, et cetera.
If I can hop in, and I know we've got a few people here that weren't in the first session. So just to introduce myself again, Dean Chalak Richards. I'm Associate Dean of Student Life, Diversity, and Belonging at Pepperdine Caruso Law, where I also graduated in 2012. Like DeAndre, I was exceptionally involved, although all of that was after my first year as well, which I think will be a running theme. And so while a law student, I was first our chapter president of our Black Law Students Association. Then my third year, I was Western Regional Chair of the National Black Law Students Association and sat on the national board. I was on our trial team and moot court team as well, which is appellate level. I also was an ambassador for the law school, so I got sent out doing recruiting and was sort of flying around doing recruiting. I worked for LexisNexis, which is a research company that legal research, and so I was a student rep and beta tester for them. And I also was a teaching assistant for a couple of professors, research assistant for a couple of professors on a Dean's Advisory Council as well. So there was a lot there, again, second and third year, which I think is a theme. Also, just to clarify for some people, I did this for the previous session, so want to make sure you guys get it too. When we talk about the first year of law school, at almost every ABA accredited school, you're going to be looking at the same curriculum. So you're going to be taking contracts, torts, criminal law, civil procedure, property, something around the Constitution, and then legal research and writing. And some places throw in some extra things. I teach a class on professional identity formation. Some of the things we're talking about, time management skills, figuring out your goals, where are your strengths, what does success look like for you, what does networking look like, what's a successful interview, some of those other soft skills as well. So that's a little bit there. I see a few, I think we'll go more straight to questions, DeAndre, this time. A question on internships for judges.
Oh, I'll do a quick introduction.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, for the other group. So my name is DeAndre Aubry, and I'll do a quick one. I graduated from Howard University, went to Southwestern Law School, had a very awesome law school experience, although I did come in first generation, wet behind the ears, didn't know what to expect. Put in the work, it played out well, and now that's what I've dedicated my career to, is helping law students figure out law school, have the tools both inside the classroom and outside the classroom to succeed in this environment. And we also help students pass the bar exam. Yeah, super excited. I want this room to be as interactive as possible, so make sure you guys use this opportunity to ask your questions. And like we said, we're going to move quicker to that. So yeah, we can go to the next question.
Very quickly, thank you both. I just want to make sure everybody knows we do have a Spanish language interpreter. If you speak Spanish or would like to ask your question in Spanish, Alfredo, if you are available, if you could just share that in Spanish for anyone who may want to communicate in that language.
Sure. This is Alfredo. Soy Alfredo, soy el intérprete que le puede ayudar. Si necesita hacer una pregunta en español o si necesita que se le interprete algo que los presentadores estén diciendo, hágalo saber, por favor. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Alfredo. We can head over to questions. I know there was a couple in the chat. I don't know if either of you wanted to.
I see them, so I can touch on that first one. So Ziomara, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, asked about the internships for judges. So working for a judge, your first summer out of law school is typically the first opportunity, and it can be very prestigious and really open up some doors. Typically what happens is during your first semester of law school, around October, November, the law school's various career services offices will start working with you on developing your resume, cover letter, the writing sample you'll pull from that legal research and writing class that I mentioned. And the applications to work for judges formally open December 1st. And so certainly at Pepperdine, what we do is we work with first year students who indicate an interest, and we, to certain judges, send out packages of materials. We also empower the students to send them out on their own. And most of the federal judges expect to receive those applications around November 30th through December 2nd. They start interviewing in mid to late December. They give an offer, some right away, some take a little bit of time. Good practice is that if a judge gives you an offer, you accept that offer. So we encourage students not to apply for judges that they really wouldn't want to work for, because it's just good practice that, especially, you know, sort of the higher up they go on the food chain, that if a judge gives you an offer to work for them, you accept that. Most of those judicial externships are unpaid during that summer, so that's something to be aware of. Not all, right? And there are certainly external funding opportunities, but I feel like it's important to let people know that this can be very prestigious, and also it can be you thinking through, how can I do this without getting paid during that time? But also, many judges will have opportunities during the academic year, which actually several that I'm friends with have actually said, in some ways, if you're applying to work for a judge in the area where you go to school, so say you're applying to an LA area judge, it might be better for you to apply for during the academic year. It's less competitive because everyone from all over the country isn't trying to get to that judge when they have to be there in person. You can get academic credit for it during the academic year that maybe you can't during the summer. That varies from school to school. At Pepperdine, if you want to take classes during the summer, your financial aid package doesn't necessarily always cover that. So you may pay for those credit hours. And so that's something else to consider. But during the academic year, it counts. You get credit for it. You're working for the judge full time. Tends to be a little bit smaller in chambers. That's the judge's office. So where in the summer they may have 5 or 6 people working for them in addition to sort of their permanent staff. During the academic year, maybe it's only 2 or 3. So now you have a lot more face time with the judge, with their clerks, and to really get the most out of that opportunity. And then there's a postgraduate opportunity to work for a judge, which is called a clerkship. So the ones during while you're a student are called externships. The ones after graduation are called clerkships. And that application process begins very, very early. That, I think, goes to some of the goals that DeAndre was talking about, right? So if you determine that you really want to be able to clerk for a judge after graduation, then you need to be setting your academic goals very, very high. You should be aiming to be, regardless of the school you go to, in that sort of top 10 to 15% of your class, if not higher. If you're at, you know, a more prestigious, I shouldn't say more prestigious, a higher ranked school, you may be able to have a little bit more fluctuation with that, but that kind of holds the same if you're at a smaller school that may be a little bit lower ranked. Being in that top will enable you to get further in that process. Having good relationships with your professors will enable you for that. So I hope that was helpful on that process. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, DeAndre.
Not much. I would just say my experience in my process in doing it was, again, kind of rooted in my whole, it seems like, message of the day is like, do well in your classes and the doors open. After my first semester, when I got the good grades, I literally went to all of my professors and was like, hey, like, I'm new to this. I just got, you know, this 4.0. Can you please let me know what I should do with this now? Like, who should I talk to? Like, can you help me out? You know, I don't know what to do with this, with these good grades. And so from there, one of the professors literally, you know, kind of ushered me into externing for the federal judge, Judge Pregerson. No, Pregerson? Yes. It's been so long. I'm like, hold on, I'm having a brain fart. But regardless, it was a federal judge. And yeah, I will say federal judge internships and externships are harder than at the state court level. They're more competitive for the federal courts. But yeah, you kind of find your angle, right? So if you're still interviewing and trying to select your school, maybe see what schools maybe have a higher rate of placing their students in courtrooms. But other than that, again, do well, network. If that's your path, kind of figure out, you know, what your angle is into that.
I also see Mr. Taylor followed up with a question. Is it common belief that the first year is the weed out year, more of a commonality or a misconception? I can only speak for Pepperdine. It is a misconception. And I think this is my sales pitch moment, so y'all can mute me if you want to, but we do not want anyone to come to the school and fail out. We don't want to weed anybody out. our professors, you were talking about, you know, open office hours and perhaps not having as much access to a professor during your first year at law school. We don't, and I sit on our faculty hiring committee, so I can say this with confidence. We don't hire anyone at the law school who is not going to be 100% open to students coming to them. We want faculty who publish and are academically rigorous, and also who are deeply invested in working closely with students. And we would take it very, very seriously if we heard that a professor was not open and did not have their door, metaphorical or physical, depending on where we are in COVID at any given time, open to students. So no, we don't do the whole, and I can say this because I run our orientation, we don't do the look to the left, look to the right, you know, one of you isn't going to be here thing. If anything, we go look to the left, look to the right, you're going to help each other achieve and get to the top. And I think this goes back to, you know, sort of DeAndre's sort of mantra, right, about knowing yourself. You have to know the environment that's going to allow you to flourish. And so some people will say, you know what, I can flourish in a place that's a little bit more cutthroat, or people aren't as invested in me individually. So maybe I can go to a larger law school or a place where it's more TA dependent. And other people will say, I really want to be in a place where they're going to make a huge investment in knowing my name and walking beside me. And nothing is wrong with either of those things. That's knowing yourself. And then once you've done that, you can put yourself in an environment that's going to be conducive to your success.
Yeah.
I see Mr. Anderson has his hand raised, and what also looked like a very beautiful baby as well. But go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Hi. Yes. So this is I'm an incoming 1E at Loyola, and as you can see, I got my kid here, 2 other kids over there in the corner. So I apologize if you guys hear them start crying or anything. But this is the first year, right? Yeah, there they go.
They did it on cue, just for
they
you.
Did it on cue. They waited. They were super loud a second ago. They heard you say my name. They're like, they jumped in. But this is about, you know, surviving our first year of law school, and we'll be coming in with, you know, family commitments. Any recommendations on balancing, you know, work as a parent, full-time work for those of us that are coming back, doing our second careers here, all that good stuff, and not all of a sudden discovering that you're like the lowest ranked person in the class because you've been having all this other stuff going on.
Yeah, I think scheduling is most important. A colleague of mine likes to say that perhaps parents are most set up to be successful at law school because you understand the value of every second that you get, of sort of knowing like, this is my 3 minutes in the library and I'm going to make it count because I may not get another, I need to take advantage of nap time because I may not get another nap time to take advantage of, right? And I think that's going to be key for your success this next year, is really maximizing every single moment that you have, and for everyone, right? But really maximizing that. Determine, and I think doing during the academic year as you go forward, you'll hear about things like outlining and flashcards and figuring out what is your study method that's going to work, and then identifying relatively early your pain points in your studies. So if, say, you're taking contracts, going, okay, I understand the concept of offer, but man, this concept of acceptance is really causing me some issues right now. Or what is consideration? I'm bringing it back for some of us, DeAndre, and scaring some new people as well, right? But then having those direct questions to be ready to go to your professor. So you're not just sort of going in all la-di-da, because you don't have time for that. You're going in and saying, these are the 2 things I understand. Here is the thing that I'd like some clarity on. I did this practice test, which I encourage all of you during your study methods to do practice essays, and then not just do it, but I take it to the professor and go, I did this practice answer to one of the questions you raised, and I'd love the opportunity to walk with you through my answer. Here's where I think I spotted this issue really well. Here's where I think I had some problems. What do you think? Because ultimately they're the one grading your exam. So they may say, oh yeah, you spotted issue 1, but missed 2 through 5, and help you identify how to do that, right? Or you think, I've written this analysis the way that you would want it, and they're going, oh, no, That's the way your property professor wants it, but it's not the way your torts professor wants it. And that can be something that takes you beyond simple memorization into writing for your audience in a way that's going to maximize your study habits and maximize your achievement on that exam. And for someone who is a parent or who's working full time, you're thinking, how can I get the most out of each moment of studying? I don't have 12 hours to put in tonight. I have 2, and I need to really focus it. And part of that focusing is taking advantage of the faculty who are there to tell you, here's what you're doing well, here's where you need to adjust. That's my 2 cents on that. DeAndre, you may have other thoughts as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a very similar message. And the buzzword that I'll just like add into that is prioritization. You know, at the end of the day, it's like law school, there's not enough time in the day, no matter what your time commitments are. You know, I was a full-time student. I was 22 years old, single, no commitments. And it was just like, I could still use some more time. So with that in mind, you know, knowing that you have time commitments, I think it's 100% when we see it possible for you to still thrive and do well in law school. It's a matter of just what she's saying. You have to be very intentional with your time. You got to be straight to the point. You have less kind of room for error. And I think it's very good to be very mindful of what are my strengths and weaknesses, you know, and really staying locked in on those to make sure you're doing what's exactly needed to get where you need to go. You know, this is also why I've created Legally Fit, right? Because you're also going to be in situations where you need to find your village, whether that's Legally Fit, whether that's on campus resources, but you have to find that support system both in law school and out of law school. So figure out what that out of law school village and support system looks like too, as far as help with the kids, right? Help with dinner and things like that. And so I think you got to go into law school again with that game plan. Here's how we're all going to collectively do this and get us across this hurdle. And then the last thing I'll kind of share, you know, that again, you're on your way to law school, about to start soon. One of the biggest time sucks that I see students have is the reading and briefing process of being a 1L. And let me be clear on this message. You absolutely have to do it. Like that is your rite of passage in the law school, is to read and brief. At the same time, students might over prioritize that, where they might spend 6 hours a night, you know, really just kind of staring at the book, waiting for it to make sense. And it's like, you can't do that. You have to remember you're paying to go to law school. You're paying to go to class to then be taught. And so don't spin your wheels doing that. Last thing I'll say is that one of the most valuable things that I think you can do to do well in school is practice essays. Practice essays and then giving them to your professors to get your feedback. Practice essays and giving them to the TAs, et cetera. So I see we're coming up on the time limit for this to end, but yeah, hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lourdes, I'm not sure if you, oh, they're gone. I was just going to tell them that I sent them an answer to their question in a chat, just in case they didn't come back over here. So hopefully they see that.
Yes, and know that at the end of this session, there's like a 10 to 15 minute window where everyone's gonna be back in the main space to do final things in the chat. I will try to make intros in this one very, very quick, because man, we can make these rooms 3 times as long.
Yeah, right.
So much to talk about. Okay, I think everyone is here, and yes, we have our interpreter. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark. I'm the LA Civil Rights staff person facilitating this room. I'm going to be very quick with my intro so we can get straight to the questions you have for our panelists. I just want to make sure that you know that this is your time to turn your cameras on and your mics on and ask your questions. You can also use the chat to ask a question, but this is our conversation period. We also have a Spanish language interpreter in the room to interpret questions and answers. If you are a Spanish speaker, just ask for interpretation and it will be provided. Alfredo, could you repeat that in Spanish?
Sure. Estas sesiones también están proveyendo un intérprete al español. Si usted necesita los servicios de un intérprete, hágalo saber, por favor.
Thank you so much. Today, we have 2 speakers in this breakout room. It is Surviving Your 1L Year, the first year of law school. We are joined by Dean Chalak Richards, the Assistant Dean of Student Life, Diversity, and Belonging at Pepperdine Law. We have DeAndre Aubry, the founder and CEO of Legally Fit, which is a company that provides law school and bar preparation coaching. I want to see just at the jump if we have any questions from anyone about surviving your 1L. I know there's a lot to explore with that topic. So any questions from our audience? Jolanda.
Oh, I'm just not quite sure, like to what extent that both of you will be giving your experience, but I'd love to know just the actual, curriculum and also like the emotional aspect of it as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to start with that. So as Mark said, my name is Chalak Richards. I'm Associate Dean of Student Life, Diversity, and Belonging at Pepperdine Caruso School of Law. Your 1L curriculum at almost every ABA accredited law school is going to be pretty much the same. So almost every 1L or first year is 1L short for first year law student. And I don't like to assume everyone knows all the terms. So almost every 1L year at any ABA accredited law school, you're going to be taking torts, criminal law, property law, contract law, civil procedure, and some form of constitutional law. So at Pepperdine, we do constitutional structure. Some people do a little bit different. You're going to be taking some type of legal research and writing class. And then that's sort of the base at every school. And then each, we'll throw something a little bit different in there. I teach a introduction to professional formation and identity formation class that talks about some more of the soft skills that you need, right? So most of those, they're broken up over both semesters. So that's kind of your core curriculum. You asked sort of about the mental and emotional strain that it can be. And it can be hard, as DeAndre said in a previous session. It can also be a lot of fun. It doesn't just have to be hard. Hard things can be enjoyable as well. But, part of that is because you're thinking in a different way. You're approaching studying in a different way. And so you've got to really be prepared for that and what that looks like when you're going in. And so, one of the things that I did and continue to recommend our students to do to maximize success is to really approach it and recognize first the time commitment that you're putting in. So kind of a baseline, if you're going full-time, and I want to stress that that might be different than if you're doing an extended or part-time option. But if you're going to law school full-time, you should be looking at doing around 50 to 60 hours a week, kind of at a baseline, right? And that's between classes and then reading and preparing and studying. That's what you should be looking at doing. And if you plan on that, then I think it becomes a lot more manageable. So I had a color-coded schedule that I had on paper because old school and printed out, right? That I really blocked out, like, this is time I'm spending with my friends. Here's when I'm going to work out. Here's when I'm going to see my family. Here's when I'm going to study. And the value of that for me wasn't just knowing when I was doing everything, but it eradicated a lot of the guilt that I think can come by choosing to spend 2 hours on Sunday afternoon with some friends. I didn't feel guilty because I knew that I'd already put in 60 hours in the week and I had the time blocked out. And so it allowed for some of the things that I knew would bring me joy and ability. And then you can manipulate that as needed to meet your own goals, right? So it might be on average, I was doing 50 or 60 hours, but when it came closer to finals, I knew, okay, I wasn't going out with my friends. My family didn't expect me to call them because it was finals time. But I also knew that it was okay because I hadn't completely neglected it. So I literally scheduled call grandpa, 15 minutes, Tuesdays from 1 to 1:15. I would call my grandfather. It was great. He's my favorite person in the world. He would say, I don't care if you fail, it'll be good. And I'm like, oh, we should all care if I fail. But it was lovely, right? And once a week, that's when I would talk to my grandfather, and it's what got me across. So I think there are ways to find some of that support. I dropped my email address in the chat, and I'm sorry I'm speaking so quickly. We've learned through 2 sessions how quickly our time goes. But email me, and I'm happy to also help you think about how to manage some of this. Shameless plug, if you come to Pepperdine, you can always come to my office and we can also manage some of this together. Couldn't resist a shameless plug there. But
yeah, and I'll add on to that. You're right. The first thing I think that goes to, I'll just talk on the emotional side, because I think the curriculum part was pretty, self-explanatory, and she hit the nail on the head there. On the emotional side, the first thing is, like, be ready for law school and get your life prepared for law school. It's kind of like, you're not going to go into, any other kind of life-changing experience or an event and not prepare yourself. Like, right, if you're going to the Olympics, you're going to train for that. You're going to get your life ready for that. You're going to let your people know, hey, I'm going to be gone physically and probably socially for this time period to get ready for this, et cetera. I think so much of law school is making sure it's the right time for you to go to law school and that right, what that's going to entail. So for me, just kind of give a little bit of example that I think set me up for success is I prepared my friends that, hey, look, like, you're not going to see me as much during this next, time period, at least for this first year, right? So that way, compared to my friends, I wasn't getting as many, because I still got some, but as many of the guilt text, from the friends and the family, and things like that to kind of add on to the pressure of now, like, oh, I'm turning into a horrible friend while I'm trying to focus on law school. So preparing my relationships was a great one. Also knowing, what I wanted to get out of law school. And for me, it was like, I enjoyed law school because I had a plan and I executed on it, and I wasn't like super worried, along the way. So I think so much of being in law school, I think that you have to get ready for emotionally is living in uncertainty, like being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? Because it's like something you don't know that you really have down until the end of the semester. But the whole semester, you're just like trying to get better, until hopefully you can perform well on the exam. But for anybody who is, easily obsessed at being right, easily obsessed at like winning right away, it can be very uncomfortable because it's such a process that's like a culmination until the exam. And that's where you perform. And then last thing I'll share on that is, on the bar exam in law school, Jolanda, do you think in, preparation for those exams, in that process, do you think you're going to end up being more right or more wrong, right? When you're doing practice questions and in the process of getting there, do you think you're going to get more questions right? Or do you think you're going to get more questions wrong?
I hope they're all right, but I would think that I would get them mostly wrong because
Yep, go for it.
No, it's just, and I think it's just like I'm learning that in my program now, where it's like you are conditioning your mind to think in a different way that's just unprecedented, which is why you are getting it wrong.
And that's the crazy part.
I'm struggling with that, which is why I'm like, any input, advice you can give me, please give it to me before I even touch on this other venture.
Yes. So look how simple that concept is that you said, I'm coming into this new environment, this new way of teaching, this new material, right? And like, I want to get it all right, but it's like, no, you're going to get so many things wrong. And that is, to me, the biggest mental hurdle that so many students struggle with is that they are uncomfortable getting something wrong. Like literally in bar prep, you'll have student A who will get a multiple choice question. They'll get it wrong and be like, oh my God, I'm going to fail the test. Like, this is it. I'm over. Like, I don't even know why I came to law school, right? And it's just like, hold on, that was just one question. And it's like, this is not the test. This is just practice. Like, we're learning. Right, where another student, right, will see a multiple choice question, get it wrong and be like, awesome, all right, like this is a learning opportunity. Let me see what I missed here. And literally, it's just that mindset that is the biggest difference. And again, the moral of the story there is going into law school, right, even for everybody who goes to law school is smart, right? We're used to being right. We're used to, getting things correct. Get comfortable being wrong, get comfortable learning from your mistakes, and realize that those mistakes aren't then an indicator of how you will ultimately perform, but you have to go through those mistakes. And it's only those that take the time to learn from those mistakes and not sulk in them that end up doing well. So I think that can be one of the biggest game changers in like adjusting, like, the emotional side of things. And I think a lot of the emotions like, oh my God, this isn't going well. But it's like, it could actually be going well, but we just have a different maybe expectation of how smooth we think the process will be.
In the absence of questions, which please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. I just want to, I see one. So I just want to add on just a little asterisk to what DeAndre was saying there about preparing your family. That will look different if you are going away for law school versus living in the same area. So it was very easy for my family. I moved away. I didn't go to law school in the same place. So they didn't expect to see me every, week, because who could afford to fly home every weekend? Not I said to fly, right? So they were content with a once a week phone call. And I do think you need to think about that. If you are an LA sort of native and you're going to law school in the greater Los Angeles area, you do want to, and maybe the other panel, panel 3, sort of spoke on this. You do want to prepare your families for recognizing that you might physically be available to them, but you're not mentally or emotionally available to them. And that's something we worked with a lot more students with during the pandemic, because their families didn't quite grasp that you're sitting in the living room and, being physically not there. So even if you live in the area, you might want to think through, okay, maybe I always studied really well at home, but now I need to find a library, a coffee shop, a Barnes and Noble. Do they still make those? I don't know. But maybe I need to find an outside place where families understand the conception of going to the office. I'm at work and I'm not here for you. And I need to treat this like work, right? So I've left the home. I've left at 7:30 this morning, and I'm not going to be back till 9, because when I'm in the building, you think you have access to me. So I need to not physically be here, and then, and make this other place where I go study. That might be a technique that works for some people if you're doing it in a place where your family also lives and they have a harder time with understanding some of those boundaries. Eleanor, did you have your little cartoon hand raised?
Yes,
Okay.
I just wanted to ask mostly about like interpersonal relationships with your professors in your 1L year. And I'm also curious about extracurriculars as well during your 1L year, and like how you manage that as well.
So I
Yeah,
can
so
start,
definitely.
or
Oh,
DeAndre, you already started, so go ahead.
okay, cool. So yeah, we actually have kind of touched on this one a bit in the other kind of sessions. Um, Quick on, my message on that is, one, when it comes to your professors, right? I would say after class is always a great opportunity to go up and ask questions, right? Because usually professors will linger. I mean, this is in the traditional sense that we're not doing Zoom classes and things like that. So I'm not sure if they stick around a little bit afterwards on Zoom. Outside of that is office hours. Like I lived in office hours, Eleanor. And to me, I really focused on, in my 1L year, building relationships with my professors and my books. Like that was pretty much it. So we were saying that you don't want to necessarily focus on the whole gambit in your 1L year, because it can be overwhelming, right? To try to be involved in on-campus organizations and to network with your professors, network with possible employers, and still do well in your classes. So you kind of want to figure out what are your priorities. And the overall message was your 1L grades are so important that that should be your top priority. And then again, I used networking with my professors because it was kind of a 2-for-1. I could go in and ask questions about the material, and in office hours, you end up getting so many little tidbits on like what may or may not end up on the final, or extra little, lessons they may give in office hours to the extra hardworking student. So that was great. And then the last thing on the professors is like, definitely make sure you're connecting with your professors in a genuine way. Like I could see sometimes where it was just kind of forced and felt opportunistic when certain people were in there just trying to do it. So work on your networking skills, try to network with professors that you align with, right? That truly interest you, and invest your time there. And so all that to say, the extracurriculars, and I'm not sure exactly which ones you're interested in, but those opportunities exist for all 3 years of law school, and I think are better focused on in your 2L year and 3L year, right? And Chalak can mention how they do it at Pepperdine. She was saying they have a policy where you can't even start your own org, or maybe even get too involved, because they want you to focus on your grades in your 1 year. But I'll let her speak on that. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on your question.
Yeah, I'll pick up from there. So we do, and I know several other schools do as well. We don't allow first year students to start an organization or to be um, in leadership or formally involved beyond maybe being a first year representative. And we even work with the orgs to limit the amount of time that those roles are taking on, because it is so important that you adjust to what law school looks like. and feels like. And all of those opportunities are there after you graduate, after your first year is complete, right? So I was in probably too many organizations, people may say now, and I was a leader and I did recruiting for the school and was flying across the country and did all these things second and third year. DeAndre mentioned like he was student body president. He was, on a journal and so on, second and third year. But your first year, you're really focused on those academics. Now we have a dedicated lunch hour where student orgs can bring in speakers, put on events. And that's a way that we encourage 1Ls to get involved is you can go to this lunch hour event, right? They're going to give you food. So we're meeting a need there and you sit there for 45 minutes, listen to someone talk about an area of law that you may be interested in, or have an opportunity to meet some people, but you're not actually doing the work to put that on. So you're just going somewhere during a time that you may or may not have studied. Most people didn't, they just ate. So great, you're going to eat. This is a way to get involved. And then for your second year, you may think about taking some leadership there. I'll dovetail from that to Ashlyn's question. Then I see Rosa, you've got your hand up. We do not allow as a rule, do not allow first year students to work during their first year of law school. Second and third year, absolutely. We actually make it a part of our honor code. And when first years start, we have them sign a form indicating that they will not be working. Because like I mentioned earlier, if you're doing about sort of that baseline 50 to 60 hours a week on law school, where do you have time to work, right? And if you're working, that's putting you at a disadvantage to everyone else. Now, again, my caveat, that's if you're doing a full-time program. If you're doing an extended program that's more evening or part-time, then it may be very possible because they've crafted that experience, recognizing that you'll be working. But if you go into a program that is crafted around students being there full-time during the day, as well as studying, and then you're working, that puts you at a disadvantage. So I would encourage you for that first year to really think strongly before you start about what scholarship opportunities are like, what your financial aid package is like, to try to minimize the financial concerns that may be there, because the data has shown that students who are working just are not as academically successful as others at law school. Now, second and third year, absolutely, you can work, and I work with students on what that looks like, and some of that is because you figured out how to do law school and what it looks like to think like a lawyer and how to be successful on those finals. DeAndre, did you have anything to add to that, the working question?
No, nothing to add. I was answering.
Oh yeah, you had it in the chat.
Her question on relationships. I actually shared something funny with you. I mean, funny, I guess. For me, again, getting my life ready for law school and getting ready for the sacrifices and commitment. I had a girlfriend at the time, and I actually broke up with my girlfriend right before law school started, just because, like, we're still friends, love the girl, right? It was just a situation where, like, it was already a relationship where, it felt like it was going maybe in that direction of breaking up. And it was just like, I'm going into law school. This is going to be demanding. And, in all seriousness, I think, again, when we're talking about preparing relationships, we have, parent relationships, sibling relationships, and then our romantic relationships. I think the romantic relationships, personally, I've seen those kind of be some of the hardest ones, the ones that feel the most effective law school, because those are the ones that expect the most out of you sometimes in life, and they're used to your emotional, availability to be there for them and their needs and things like that, where sometimes you may just spend all day in the library and you're just like, I don't got it, I don't have it in me. So, in no way am I a proponent. I recommend people break up before they go to law school, but I think it's a great opportunity, as we should always do, is evaluate our relationships and make sure we are serving the other person, that person serving us, all that good jazz. But yeah, I don't want to turn into a TED talk on relationships. Definitely, evaluate them. And if it's toxic, get out. If it's great, stay in it.
I will add that at least for us during our orientation week, we have an evening session just for students in committed relationships. So maybe it's long-term, engaged, married, and we invite their spouses to come. And our upper year students who are in those relationships, we provide dinner and they meet and talk about like how have they sort of had their relationship continue. So it doesn't need to be a fellow law student. We've had people who are very successful, but to DeAndre's point, like you need to be thoughtful with your partner about what your commitment looks like. This is a sacrifice on their end too, and they need to be prepared for that. And that could be financial, it could be time, et cetera, et cetera. But I would advocate having those conversations early about what that looks like and where those boundary lines are. And if they expect you to reach a certain level of success in law school, help them understand that, hey, if we both want me to be the number 1 or 2 student in the class, that means I'm not gonna be able to do all of this with you all day, all night. But if we're okay with me just graduating, then maybe I can, right? But they can't hold you to a standard that they're not willing to also make the sacrifices to support. And that's partnership. But again, yeah, now we're going into TED Talk territory. So
Right.
Rosa, please, your questions.
Thank you. I am actually a DOJ accredited rep, and I work in immigration, an immigration nonprofit. I'm thinking of law school at this point because there's only so much I can do as an accredited rep. And so I was wondering what was something that you did to financially prepare before going into law school, if there's any things that you had to keep in mind, so that, because I'm thinking about maybe either going part-time, I'm thinking maybe doing that, possibly still working, or considering the full jump and then going ahead. But I was wondering if you had any recommendations there.
Yeah, so first of all, when I was in active practice, I practiced immigration law and particularly removal defense. So you are doing the good work and fighting the good fight there. And I encouraged all of my team to go to law school, as a matter of fact. But nonetheless, I will say for myself, I was a little younger and not quite as young as DeAndre said he was starting law school, but a little younger than I am now. And so some of it was saving ahead of time. Some of it for me was trimming the fat on my expenses, and even preparing my relationships that way. Hey, friends, I'm starting law school in 4 or 5 months. Like, I can't be going out to dinner with you. Brunch has got to stop, or whatever. We can't do the concerts. The things that I would do that were not frivolous, but a little bit more like, expendable income type things, I had to really trim down so that I knew that I was functional during law school. Now, that's where, again, I would advocate, especially if you're going full time, you want to be pushing for the best possible financial aid package you can get. And so I would encourage you, if you haven't done it yet, invest in your LSAT prep and support, because every point you go up on the LSAT could be another $1,000, $5,000 in your scholarships. And that really can make that difference for you, right? And so for some of us, like I did my LSAT on my own and studied from books at home, and thank God and hard work that it was successful for me. But if you can invest in the tutor or the company, Khan Academy has some great free stuff out right now. DeAndre's company may do LSAT prep, I don't know. Others do, right? If you invest in that and see it as that investment, I'm spending this $4,000 here to get $20,000 out in a scholarship, that I think would make a huge difference. And then be honest with yourself. Do I need to do part-time because my bills require me to be working and having this steady income? Or am I willing to, for 1 year, take out more loans and then know that I'm setting myself up? I'll go back to work my second or third years and be able to manage that more, even still more at a reduced level. You're likely looking at 20-ish hours a week, but I'll manage that. Or I'm going to be able to take out these loans, and my goal post-graduation, I'm going to do the best I possibly can, be as close to the top of the class, because I'm going to go into a larger firm job that will start me out at a salary that will allow me to, pay these loans off. So I think that's something important to think about when you're thinking about those finances, as DeAndre was saying, is what is that end goal? If you want to go back into immigration, I'm so sorry we ain't got the money like that as a practice area. So you need to be really thoughtful about the loans that you're taking out. But to Mark's question, yes, so not necessarily personal loans, but your financial aid package can cover that, right? So you can take out up to the amount of what you need. So you may get scholarships, maybe a full tuition scholarship. Then you're thinking, I'm going to take out loans to cover personal expenses, rent, car payments, groceries, etc. for that time. Or you may say, I'm going to be really frugal on those things to take out less. So, and that runs the range of what you think you're going to do after graduation. I'm a big proponent, again, getting the best possible scholarship packages that you can to minimize those loans that you may need to take out so that you maximize your opportunities after graduation. And then you're not going, I need to get a job that pays X because I have all these loans, but it's not a job that feeds your soul or aligns with your morals. And I'm not saying those big jobs aren't good moral jobs, but you might say, I came to law school to be a juvenile public defender. That was me. And now I can't afford it because I took out all these loans. Thankfully, that was not me, right? But you should assess that before you start.
Gotta have a
Where I'm
plan.
going.
Gotta have the plan.
Yes,
Figure it all out
absolutely.
beforehand.
And that will drive the extracurriculars you get in. That will drive, do I do a journal? Do I try to be on the mock trial team or moot court team? Because if I really want to be at the DA's office, maybe doing that trial team experience is going to be more valuable on my resume for that application than being on a law review journal. But if I want to go to this big law firm, that mock trial may not be as valuable as that law review. And so having some thoughts, be a little open, but having some thoughts about this is the path I want to take will help you to direct your time and be much more intentional about your finances, about your studying, about your extracurriculars, your co-curriculars, what faculty you choose to build relationships and align with. You can be very intentional about all of this because it's professional school, it's not undergrad. And you want to maximize. Our dean is always pushing us to think about the return on investment because we're not a cheap school. So he's going, if the average student is coming out with, brace yourselves, $160,000 in debt from going to our law school, they need to have a job when they graduate. They need to pass the bar the first time they take it. They need, we cannot in good conscience let people have all this debt and not make sure that we have set them up as much as possible to be able to come out of that and feel like it's a worthwhile investment in themselves. So I can go down the sales pitch route, but I won't on that. But 90% of our graduates last year had a full-time, long-term legal job, and 90% passed the California bar the first time they took it. So ding, ding.
Yeah. I wanted to add a little bit onto that, Chalak, too, and make sure, right, you are taking control of your plan. Right, Rosa, you are going to get so much advice. You're going to get pulled in so many different ways. They're going to oh, you got to go do this. You got to go talk to this person. You have to make sure you gather so much information, but then at the end of the day, it's you sitting down and kind of saying this is where I want to go, how I want to do it, or what my plan is. I could speak so much for myself, just, my personal experience was, I did well. I kind of knew what I wanted to do. And then all of a sudden after I did well, I'm this conversation, that conversation, talking to this person. And it was like a whirlwind. And for a second, I kind of lost myself in this, just kind of all of this stuff. And I think it's so easy for that to happen that, again, come up with your plan, get all the advice you can, but just make sure you're never just blindly following any one person. Never blindly follow what I say, never blindly follow what anybody says. Take it all and see what kind of makes the most sense for, again, what your ultimate goal was. And then also too, I wanted to I didn't see Jolanda's specific comment in the chat about dating other law students. I want to touch on that one because I am passionate about that topic.
Don't do it. Just kidding.
Because it then leads to a bigger point, right? So the small message to that is, yes, do not do it. I tell all my friends, if you go to dentistry school, if you go to med school, law school, do not date somebody in your class. It's just the worst idea. I mean, let's be real. It's dating in Los Angeles. Half the times it's not gonna go too far anyway. So it's now you're gonna be stuck looking at that person in the middle of torts class trying to focus, and you're oh my God, this is awkward, this is weird, right? And it's just that's no bueno, because you should be focused on the professor. So that leads me to my bigger point, which, again, is a big moral of the story. In order to do well in law school, guys, it requires such focused learning, such intentional learning, because you have to just get in there, get comfortable with being wrong and see all your mistakes, accept them, understand what you missed and why. You can't study for law school and have Keeping Up with the Kardashians on in the background or the NBA finals on in the background. You can't be doing it while you're in class wondering if so-and-so is looking at you or if the crush is reciprocated. You have to be so locked in to really excel in this space that, for all the different reasons, all the different topics, it comes down to like 1L year. Just understand the law. Understanding the law will open up all the extracurriculars. Understanding the law will open up all the job opportunities. Understanding the law will help you pass the bar on the first attempt. It's like all roads start with understanding the law first and trying to quiet everything else. But if it wasn't clear, do not date anybody in your class. All right,
I
cool.
mean, I will say every year we have a couple people, like we had just had a group of 2-3Ls announce their engagement, and I went over after and I was like, this feels like a poor life choice, but I support you. And so there's always a few people, right? Love will blossom where it will blossom. We support love in all the forms that it takes. And at the same time,
Yes.
be aware of, you have to know yourself. What's going to be the thing that's going to hold you back? What's going to be the thing that's going to propel you forward? Is this a person who, as a partner, is going to be supportive of everything you want to achieve? So whether pre-law school or during, I say don't do it because you fall into that weird competition. So we have a first-year couple who are married. They're both 1Ls. Thankfully, they're in different sections. But I was just meeting with the one of the spouses this week. I require all of our first-year students to meet with me during their second semester. We spend 20 minutes and I try to help them get back to, why did you come to law school? What is it that you're interested in doing? What are, some of the classes you can take during your upper year, so on and so forth. And the spouse was saying, what's really hard is one of the spouses did very, very well, the other one not as well. And that's created an awkward dynamic in their relationship. And I was like, well, first of all, I'm not a therapist, so I'm going to refer you to the counseling center that's free, and you all may want to do some couples counseling. But on top of that, let's go back to, why did you come here and do this? So not your spouse, but you. What do you want to achieve? Do you have to be number 3 in the class or number 1 in the class to do that? If so, let's talk through some academic strategies that may get you there. But if not, you need to be content in who you are, independent of your spouse, and your achievements independent of your spouse. So TED Talk territory again, but there are a lot of reasons why it can be very awkward to be in that relationship. So we encourage people, just don't do it, girl.
There's always exceptions to the rule, but
there's always exceptions, but they proved why the rule is there in the first place. Just don't do it.
It's still a rule for a reason.
Just say no. It's like drugs. Just say no.
You had a follow-up question, Jolanda?
I do. So, and I literally just overheard that about the relationships. That's like not my focus, because it's like, I'm in my program. Oh, I see you, girl. Trust me, I will not do it. But, and I don't think this is going into TED Talk territory because it's about the 1L year. How do you, I guess, find like a good, like school, like not even work life, just school, like life balance? I feel like I'm in the space of, I'm very adamant, I'm very focused, like that's my trajectory with school. But then at the same time, that's literally just my trajectory with school. And not to say that, I feel like deprived or I'm losing out or anything, but it's just at some point I do know that obviously the social aspects and events that are going on, I need to start integrating myself back into that, because again, just like any school commitment, it's short term. It's just, you have to, go through the trials and tribulations of it. So
yeah. I mean, I would say, think about the major and the minors, right? So there are some major things that you don't necessarily want to miss. There, the wedding, the funeral, maybe the birth of the baby or something, right? Like those are majors where law school's 3 years. If you're doing a full-time sort of straight through program, it's only 3 years, right? Like those major things, are you going to look back in 10 years and be like, man, I really wish I was in my sister's wedding photo? Probably. So that's a major. The minors, you're not going to look back in 3 years and be like, man, I wish I was at brunch. you know? And that for me was, and again, I moved away, so that helps a little bit because I couldn't have gone to the everyday things. But at that for me was even helpful in thinking like financially, is this something worth flying home for? Is this whatever? The major things are the major things. And then you work. So during law school, one of my best friends, her father died. I flew for the funeral and I was with her for a week. Thankfully, it wasn't during my first year, but I flew for the funeral and was with her for a week because that was a major. And I would regret not being there for someone who's like my sister when her father died, right? I also brought my textbooks with me. That was pre-Zoom, so I couldn't Zoom into class, but I brought my textbooks with me. I made arrangements for friends to take notes and pass those on. I studied for, I worked on my outlines and studied for finals. The plane ride was 5 hours and I didn't sleep during those 5 hours. I was reading and making sure I was up to date on the reading. And as DeAndre's putting in the questions, if I had gaps in my understanding from the reading, that I was prepared to go to my professors and ask questions about those gaps based on what I would have missed in class. So I didn't go, great, I'm not doing school at all because now I'm here for my friend. I said I need to be here for my friend and I need this school to fit in. And so even while I was there, some people were like, we're gonna go out for breakfast with her. I was like, okay, I'm gonna study and I'll, do this half hour with her after, but the major things to be there for. And I think that's important, is taking that step back. Like I mentioned earlier, though, I also scheduled in intentional time to be there for family or friends. Again, easier to do when you're away, but if you let your friends know every other Saturday from 6 to 9 p.m., I'm available. I made some friends in the LA area and I said, every other Saturday, 6 to 9, that's our time. Let's get it in because that's all you got. We made that 3 hours count, like we made it a good 3 hours and I knew, okay, I've had this time and now I'm back. And you give yourself that thing to look forward to so you don't turn into that robot, but don't over schedule it and you're not doing school either, right? So every other week, Saturday night may be exactly the break that you need. Every Thursday and Saturday and Sunday morning, I feel like we need to have a conversation about some priorities. But again, if your goal is just to graduate, maybe not. Maybe you're like, that's all I need to do, And so be aware of that as well. If you're planning to go to law school, be an entrepreneur, you say, I need to be out in the streets building this network. All I need to do is graduate because I'm going to start this business as soon as I graduate. So you might have different goals from that. But if it's just maintaining those relationships, major, minors, and then intentional time together would be mine.
To add on to that, I was going to say, I challenge everybody, who's going to law school before you start, is as we're all coming out of COVID, as we're all just wherever we're at in life, minus COVID, figure out what are your balance requirements, your mental health requirements, right? Because for everybody that's different. Again, I talked about my experience in one of the earlier rooms. And it's like, for me, I was super social in high school, basketball team, did everything. College, I went to Howard University. I didn't try to be social. You can only avoid being so social at a school like Howard. So there's still some level of that there. When I got to law school, it was like I was really, really focused on buckling down. And it was easy for me at that time to put up a wall between me and, my family and friends. And not like a wall in a very negative way. But again, they understood that, hey, I'm trying to progress myself for us, right? This is all part of the village. I'm going to get this education so I can help my friends when they're starting a business, or I can help my family members when they have questions regarding the law, et cetera. So had them buy into what I was doing to give me the space to focus on that. And I also, because of where I was at, I didn't need a lot of time with other people. I wasn't like in the library torn, like, oh, I wish I was hanging out, et cetera. So I think you need to challenge yourself to figure out what are your needs and be realistic with them. Don't, create more of a social environment need that you have if you don't have it. Figure out what that is and then move accordingly. And again, I think it's just, we're coming out of COVID. And again, entering your life, you could have different demands on what your needs are. Again, I started law school at the age of 22, just out of undergrad, single, no responsibilities. It was very easy for me to just do that. So some people are similarly situated. Some people are coming into law school at a different stage of their life, and then their needs look different. So there's just no cookie cutter answer or approach to it. And so many people, I feel like going to law school, just kind of like, it's just so fast paced. I'm like, all right, apply. Okay, I'm in. But you didn't go into it with a plan, knowing, again, just what your goals are, what your needs are, and then executing on that. So I think that's the biggest thing. Challenge yourself to do all that thinking beforehand, because then now you got a plan and it's easy. And then again, when you can have a plan, you can share that plan with your family and say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. So they're not surprised when, you miss this event or that event. But last thing I'll say, again, I was aggressive with it, but I was comfortable with it. My family respected it. I mean, even to the point where it was like Thanksgiving, it was like, I'll show up at the end of the night, for whatever anybody didn't eat, but I'm focused right now. This is my 1L year. After that, things changed. And I'll tell you too, like, I was a big proponent of on the weekends. I didn't do too much during the day, but I'm a night owl. I like to go out at night. So I used to love, waking up Saturday morning and getting in some good practice, a practice essay, some outlining, et cetera, like really get some good work in, and then feel so good going out at night and hanging out with my friends. I just felt like I just put in a strong day of work. And then now you're hanging out in a guilt-free way, to something that, Chalak mentioned, talking about going out guilt-free. One of the worst things you can do is start to like try to do other things in that work-life balance, but just feel guilty while you're doing it. And I think we can all relate to that. If anybody has worked or been in school before, where you're just then like not getting the true value of that balanced activity if you're just feeling guilty. But if you feel like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do, I'm following the plan, and now this is my scheduled time and I'm supposed to be doing this right now, then it's like, all right, you're actually getting the like value out of it. So that's my 2 cents there.
I just want to let all of you know I'm putting my email in the chat again, and would be more than happy for any of you to email me if you want to talk about law school in general, Pepperdine specifically, your first year. One of my second half of my title is I'm director of our Institute for Professional Excellence, which means I work with students on all of these things and doing, where are your skills? Where are your passions? How does the law align with that? What does this look like? What's your definition of success? How can we meet into that? So please don't hesitate to reach out for any of this. And then, yeah, patience, I put a shameless plug there, but we're a school that does not hire people who are not willing and eager to spend time with students. So they're there for you. And that's something that you should evaluate as well. Do you need an environment where professors are going to be more open, or do you need an environment, or are you okay, or do you need an environment where it's a lot more self-study and then you sort of go to them as you need? And that should be part of your evaluating, not just, I hear from some students sometimes, I just need to go to the highest ranked school possible. And I'm like, okay, to DeAndre's point, that may be part of the plan, and that's fine. Let's also think about the environments that will set you up for success. You got into Harvard, but they're not giving you any money. All right, maybe it's, does that align with your life plan? Or you got into somewhere that's really well known for trial programs and you really want to be a trial attorney. That may be a better alignment with your life's plan. Or you want to work for a judge, and this is a place that always, consistently places people with judges. So be even selective when you're applying and thinking about what fits with who I am as a person. Last final anecdote, I was doing visits of schools with some friends after I was admitted, and we went to one law school that will be named, that's on the East Coast. And we did a tour, and when we were leaving, one of my friends goes, "You can't come here. Everyone here has ugly shoes." And worst reason in the world to disqualify a very, very good law school. And in that moment, I was like, you're right. That just means a lot to me to walk around and see people who like generally care about what they look like. Worst reason. I say that to say you have to know, what are the things, right? And then be content in your choices and know that you've made the right choice going forward. DeAndre, I think we actually beat the closeout for once. I don't know.
Once, yeah. And I was gonna say too, guys, don't forget, in my own shameless plug, when you guys are going to law school, again, like your on-campus resources are there. Whenever you feel like, you want something that can give you additional guidance throughout the process. Like that's literally what I created Legally Fit for. So just remember, we are starting to work with schools. Hopefully by the time you guys all start at your school, Legally Fit services will be subsidized. So they're offered to you for free, but we are here to help you both inside the classroom and outside the classroom, you know, whatever it may be. But yeah, I would love it. I mean, if you guys have any more questions, then, you know, they have us here until the clock runs. So if you guys want to squeeze some more in, you know, now's your time.
I was trying to see if we missed anything in the chat. Oh, never
Oh,
mind.
she didn't give us the 3 minutes. She said 30 seconds. We coming back. But yeah, guys, before the breakout room closes, it was a pleasure. I hope you guys all have an amazing, amazing law school journey, if that's the way that you go. And if you don't go to law school, if something about this has shown you otherwise, just make informed decisions, do your research, man, and enjoy your life. I hope it all works out. And we're always here for, you know, when you need us.
Ditto.